Well, welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. Absolute pleasure to have so many different people here. Having a look through the list, it's great to see a different mix of sports from across the UK, which is great, not even just in Scotland. So that's lovely to see. Just a bit of housekeeping. As you may have heard, I wasn't aware we were live before there, but as you may have heard, we are going to record tonight's session. So hopefully you're aware of that. Other bit of housekeeping, if you could just keep your microphones muted whilst we're doing some presentations, that would be fantastic. Although there will be lots of opportunities to ask questions at the end of the presentations. There is also a chat function, which I think Will has already dropped a message into. So hopefully everyone will have will be able to ask questions in that throughout the presentation as we're going along. Just before I introduce you more formally to Mark and Will, just to quickly run you through Club Development Scotland for those that aren't aware. Some of you will be aware of what we do, perhaps others are less aware. So Club Development Scotland is the consultancy arm of Supporters Direct Scotland, which is a community benefit society set up to support community sport in Scotland. We were established in 2016 to provide specific sport to community clubs, and that's predominantly through guidance and services. Now, those guidance documents are accessible on our website, and we'll run you through the types of things we are doing to help clubs in Scotland at the moment. We are a social enterprise. We're a non-profit, so all of our proceeds go back into our work, which is providing guidance for clubs and helping them through building capacity. And we support all different types of clubs as well. So that stretches from the professional game to the grassroots game. In Scotland, we've worked with professional clubs like St Mirren, all the way down to very small grassroots, unincorporated rugby clubs, taekwondo clubs, and the list goes on. So we are able to help everyone and anyone that's looking for some support, really. In terms of the supports and services that I mentioned, that's just a sort of a sample of the types of things we're able to do to help clubs. The dominant amount of our work is really around incorporation. So chatting to clubs, understanding what it is that they want to do, what their aspirations are. Often that will involve incorporating as a legal form of some sort. Often that's as a charity. So a lot of our work is around that. If they're eligible for it, we'll help them work out how to apply for gift aid, help them with funding, fundraising, membership management, ESF transfers, business planning, and again, the list goes on. But really getting down to the nuts and bolts of what we're here to discuss this evening and what you signed up for, we're looking at sponsorship in sport tonight. So I'm delighted that we're able to have Mark and Will along. A bit of research that came out last year suggested that just over 60,000 clubs in the UK were operating at either a break-even point or at a deficit, which is quite staggering, really, which goes to show the need for clubs to be able to generate new forms of income. And I think sponsorship is perhaps I think most clubs will probably appreciate that as one of their biggest untapped areas in terms of where they could be generating new funds to support their work. And sort of the question of how to best go about that, the most effective way to do that is regularly discussed, but hopefully it's one we're able to answer tonight. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the experts who aren't me. So it's Mark Covington, who is the CEO of Snap Sponsorship. He decided to start Snap Sponsorship whilst working for his local rugby club, Guildford. And whilst he was doing it, developed a methodology for better engaging with sponsors and really learned a lot of best practice along the way, which led him to develop the platform. Will was doing an internship back with Snap back in 2017 and almost went full circle, wrote his thesis around the value of sports sponsorship and the price setting and best understanding the methods for evaluating the effectiveness of those, and then went back full circle, as I say, and ended up back with Snap again after that. So absolutely delighted to have them both here this evening, and they're going to provide their expertise. So I'll hand over to them.
Thanks, Andrew.
Andrew, thank you very much. That's quite an introduction. I haven't seen that picture for a long time. That's 3 stone and 2 inches of shorter hair. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for taking time out this evening to come and join us. I'd like to start by saying that I genuinely hope everyone can go away with something this evening that will support the sporting organisation, the club that you represent, in some way from a financial perspective. And I very much hope that this evening session doesn't come across as this is Snap and this is what we do and quick, come and buy it. It's certainly not the intention. It's a tool here which I believe may well be able to support you. It may be something you don't need. It may be something that you're perfectly proficient at achieving using your own methods and the existing tools that you have. What we found over the last 8 years as a business, as Snap Sponsorship, is that we have been able to provide the knowledge and the tools and the experiences of other clubs throughout the UK. And by sharing that information and providing the tools, we've enabled what is predominantly a volunteer workforce amongst our clubs to be much more efficient with their time and deliver maximum impact with that limited amount of volunteer time that they can contribute. I'd just like to open up by just talking about a few generic things before we dive into showing you some of the platform and its functionality. And I'd just like to start by talking about some of the things that we've seen happen really successfully during lockdown at a number of the clubs that we work with at Snap Sponsorship. And I talk about phase one, or sorry, lockdown one, back in the early part of 2020. We saw a number of clubs utilising platforms like GoFundMe, like Just Giving, to great effect, encouraging members, fans of the club to give and to gift money to those organisations that were in need. And lots of them quoting different reasons for needing it. Some were looking to be able to top up furloughed staff that maybe were the few employed resources at the club, maybe bar managers, caterers. Others were looking to offset losses that they were going to make on external venue hire through the summer period when games weren't able to be played, or through winter period, depending on sport. And some clubs saw some really great success with that. I've seen Just Giving pages and GoFundMe pages raising more than £30,000-40,000 over the course of a week for some clubs. But we also got some really interesting feedback that not every club member is inspired or confident to drop money into an undefined bucket, an empty pot. And what we've seen work incredibly well is both on the Snap platform and offline is the opportunity to cover clubs' fixed costs being brought to market. And I'll show you some of that later on from a functionality perspective, but as I mentioned, can equally be done offline. And the things I'm talking about are simple insurances, utility bills, electricity, gas, insurances, just putting up these items as fixed costs that need to be covered, much like you would have a brochure for sponsorship items, maybe front of shirt, left sleeve, right sleeve, back. Cricket, it might be the wicket covers, etc. These items have been listed as available for sponsorship, so a member can come forward and sponsor the electricity bill for January 2021, for example. And it just gives that element of tangibility that maybe one of these Just Giving or GoFundMe type pages doesn't necessarily offer. That also said, we also have to appreciate that whilst we're not playing sport, we also have a considerable value as a club, as a group of members, that we shouldn't forget about just because we're in this situation where we're not playing, we're not training, and we have what we might perceive to be a lower value. We've got to remember that there are a lot of organisations who are trading very strongly, in fact, trading at record levels through this pandemic. And if we look at some of the government interventions around stamp duty holidays and what that's done for the likes of the estate agents in the country, those estate agents have still been transacting property sales. Therefore, surveyors have still been operating, as have solicitors, as have removal companies. Now, if we take that in context and we consider how many members from your club might move on average per annum, and then you look at the combined fees of those 4 or 5 service providers that I've just mentioned, it would probably not be inconceivable to think that your club might be worth something running into the tens of thousands of pounds to those service providers over the course of a year. So that hasn't stopped, and those transactions are still going to happen. And those organisations would no doubt love to have access, or certainly be put on the radar of your members. So I would encourage you, if nothing else comes out of this evening, just to think about the things that your members currently buy from a product or service perspective, and look at how you can maybe look to target some of those organisations who haven't felt the pinch of COVID, and maybe make those approaches as your first action following this evening. And what I'd like to do, just to bring some of that to life, is just to show you a couple of examples of how, admittedly, this is using our tool, but how that methodology can be well placed, and has been well placed by clubs very near to you in Scotland. So if I select the right screen, here we go. Okay, you should now be seeing a screen pop up which has got Big Town RFC on the page. And across the top here, I'm just going to jump straight over to the Twitter feed of a rugby club called Dice. Dice RFC are based in Aberdeen. They're one of the earliest adopters of our online technology platform. So back in 2012, when Snap was founded, it was born off of the back of My Local Rugby Club, as Andrew rightly introduced. My Local Rugby Club building a new clubhouse. That clubhouse cost us somewhere in the tune of £1.2 million, and we were £500,000 short of the funding we required to complete that build. And we were quite a mature club in terms of our size of membership, the way we operated commercially as a business, but our sponsorship was very much philanthropy and donation led. So we had lots of people who were ultimately members of the club who were very generously giving, with very little expectation of return. But what that meant was we tended to have fluctuating values, higher level of churn, and relatively low transaction values. And we needed to change that. We needed longevity, we needed bigger numbers, and we needed it quite quickly. And that was where I saw the opportunity in the market, not just for my club, but clubs all over the country in every different sporting discipline. And Snap sponsorship was born back in 2012. And fast forward 8 years, and we realized that, you know, it certainly wasn't something we could scale with human resource. There's 215,000 amateur sports clubs in the UK. And therefore, we absolutely needed to follow in the footsteps of Uber in the way that they've revolutionized the transportation industry, and the way that Airbnb has transformed the property stays business. So snapsponsorship.com was brought to market. And as I mentioned, Dice were one of our early adopters. Now, Dice had a really successful first year, moving from circa £300 to circa 9,000 in sponsorship. It really made them look very differently at the way that they operated. As the first club that signed up in Scotland, I jumped on a flight and came up, met with Phil over at Dice. Great guy, really passionate about the club. But I was really amazed by what I saw when I arrived, because Dice Rugby Club, for those of you who may well know it well, for those of you who don't, it's made up of about 50 members. I think it's fair to say that not all of those 50 members are members insofar as they pay their subs, but they're members. Their only thing that they own or claim to own is the ship container in the Asda car park, which is adjacent to the council rented pitch that they rent. The ship container was negotiated from the duty manager at Asda because it was falling into disrepair, and they said, if we give it a lick of paint, can we stick our bibs, balls and cones in it? And so that's what they own. And the clubhouse is the local pub. So on paper, they look quite unsponsorable, and not, don't particularly have a huge amount of value. And credit where credit's due. This year, Dice has spent some of the money they've made over the last couple of seasons in sponsorship to invest in a Velo camera, and this camera records a 180-degree angle. It does uses some smart AI technology to overlay some clips, and does some quite smart post-match analytics. And when they're not using that to enrich the experience of their players and record their games at a weekend, they're renting out to schools to use during the week. So not only have they reinvested that sponsorship money, they've also reinvested it in an area where it creates another revenue line for them. And it's another thing that I'd stress is very much worth considering, whether it's as simple as buying a really good coffee machine for the clubhouse, which then generates revenue, or whether it be in their instance generating revenue via the hiring out of a camera that they've brought. But that was inspired by the conversation I had at the start of the season with Phil, which went along the lines of them having concern about what their value was in light of not being able to play any games, in light of them not having a full-time fixed premises whereby they can have branding and advertising items plastered across billboards, which might naturally take huge footfall. Yes, they are adjacent to an Asda, and in a normal circumstances, had they owned their ground, they could have had some great branding up of sponsors to be seen by the huge footfall of people that go into the Asda, but they simply don't have that luxury. And they were concerned about, what proposition they'd be going to market with. And I draw your attention to the screen that I'm sharing, and this is a tweet that came out off the back of a conversation I had with Phil, because I asked him the question, well, how many of your members drive cars? And for those of you who know where it is, you wouldn't get to it without driving. And therefore, it was a kind of loaded question because I knew what the answer was going to be. And the answer was, about 50. And if you go on the internet and you search on Google, what's the average failure rate for an MOT, you can find out. And then you can also find out what the average remedial works costs are for MOT failures. And you can start to do some really basic mathematics and work out that Dice Rugby Club is probably worth about £5,000 a year to a local garage in just simple MOT servicing and repair works per annum. And therefore, we kind of planted that seed, and Dice went out with this post. They'd originally used our social sharing tool, which I'll show you in detail later, to promote the fact they had water bottles available for sponsorship. They then quoted their own tweet using the hashtag local garages. Said alluded to the fact they'd make a great partner, and then they listed out a whole series of local garages near them. And again, you can find these by simply Googling garages near me. It will come up with a list of garages, and you can work your way through them, go to their website, see if they've got a Twitter page, and take the handle and tag them into the post. And then you'll see here as we go down, someone here at Snap commented, suggesting that there was a value to be had. And then CG Garages Dice get in touch the same day, 8th of July, the same day that this post was originally published. And the email was sent and this deal was done. And it was that very direct route to approaching that sponsor, which expedites what traditionally may be somebody, a willing volunteer, maybe you on the call today, walking local streets, going into local businesses and asking, going in and pitching your sponsorship opportunities to those businesses. Now, that's very labor intensive and comes with varying levels of success. This post has been sent from the comfort of Phil's house, probably from the palm of his hand, from his mobile phone, and he's spoken to directly, because that's going to have gone ding in the hand of and the palm of the owner of that business or the head of marketing at that business for all of these 10 or so garages simultaneously that he's tagged. This wasn't an isolated situation, because if I go back to Dice Rugby Club, if I go back into Dice RFC's feed and I scroll down to that date, not only was there that original piece of success with the garage, it really spurred them on to apply the same methodology to just the general outgoings from a product and service perspective of their members. And as you'll see here, this is back to that post about garages, but then if we scroll up a couple of days, you'll see that on the 11th of July, they said it's been a super busy day, seven sponsorship deals today alone, and still positive for more to come. And this was just a case of simply looking at the products and services that have been recession-proof and COVID-proof that their members are still buying on a routine basis. And if we start scrolling up, we'll see who some of those are. So people like the window cleaner. I'm sure I certainly can't speak for everyone, but personally, my window cleaner has still been coming for the last year to clean our windows because we want to do the right thing and try and keep this guy employed as well. So this guy's come in, this window cleaner's come in and sponsored the number 9 shirt for the season 2020-2021. There's no rugby being played, but he's now been promoted to the 50 members at Dice and their friends as a potential window cleaner. And again, without wanting to stress the point, it really is just about exploiting the products and services that are regularly purchased by your members and then looking at who those businesses might be. again, I just want to show you here Watsonians Cricket Club, again, up in Scotland. It's really here just to highlight the fact that that knowledge sharing that we hang our hat on here at Snap, the ability to just cross-fertilize great ideas across all clubs in all sporting disciplines at all levels of performance across the UK. So you'll notice a distinct similarity to this post. Watsonians went one stage further because they've actually detailed some price points and potential values. So they've just done the actual mathematical equations in the comment down here. But they were just looking at hairdressers, and they've tagged here, half a dozen or so local barbers. And they've said, well, if 10% of our 200 members come and got their hair cut, an average cost of £10, 12 times a year, £2,400 worth of potential revenue for one of these businesses. They've also secured, since being on the platform, a pedal bike shop. And that was, again, simply tagging some pedal bike shops and suggesting that their members are looking to keep fit when they're not playing. And, cycling's a good way of doing that, and they're going to be looking to buy bikes. So that's some of the outcomes that we've seen in terms of, COVID-proof, recession-proof comms, which has engaged sponsors in what's been a particularly difficult time. Just looking at sponsorship slightly differently to what we may have traditionally done with regards to kind of the front of our match shirt, which is very often in lots of people's minds perceived to be the most valuable opportunity that clubs possess. So that kind of concludes a bit of an overview piece on just, hopefully sponsorship, some other opportunities outside of that with Just Giving, GoFundMe, thinking slightly more laterally around products and services that your members might want to buy rather than things that may have traditionally gone out for sponsorship for. And then finally, just how we go about targeting some of those businesses using technology to expedite what might have been a labor-intensive process previously. Just coming on to the actual technology itself and what Snap's done. So we've spent a number of years with R&D with a number of clubs from all different sporting backgrounds. We've currently got members here on the snapsponsorship.com website that span GB sailing, GB bobsleigh, GB triathletes, so all individual participant sports, right the way through to in the Premiership, we've got London Irish in rugby, and then we've got tiny clubs like Dice with sub 50 members. So whether it's individual sport, mass team sport, and whether it's performance or whether it's very, very much grassroots participation, the fundamentals of sponsorship and the functionality that we've developed spans all of those to support, as I mentioned at the very start, maximising your impact as volunteers whilst minimising the time required to do the work. So what's on the screen now is a Snap Sponsorship Club profile. It's a fictitious organisation called Big Town RFC. There's no relevance to that whatsoever. It's just to demonstrate for the purposes of getting around some of the functionality this evening. So if someone comes and registers on snapsponsorship.com, they will come to this screen. And on the left-hand side, the first thing I want to just show you is how that onboarding process works. So to allay any fears or concerns around the ability to build what it is that I'm ultimately going to be showing you this evening, because I think on the face of it, like all technology products, depending on your level of technology experience and your how used to building things like this you are, it might be perceived to be quite daunting. But I'm really pleased to say that we've had a whole range of people independently build their profiles using these support tools. So when you first come in, it will automatically launch this knowledge base on the left-hand side. And when this launches, you'll see that it's got a whole series of tasks here that need to be completed. Many of these have already got a strike through because this profile's already been built. But if I were to click on one of these for the sake of showing you, let's go to create an opportunity. It tells me to come over here and click the main menu. And when I do so, it takes me to the relevant area, assets and opportunities. And then it takes me into here, gives me a video overview of how I go about doing it. And when I click start, it then takes me through click by click. And all of these little question marks tell me exactly what I need to put in each box and where I need to go next. And it walks me through the entire process. Should those walk me guidance items not get you where you need to go, You can come up here and speak to this little AI robot. You ask it a question, it will serve you pretty good guidance. You can ask it the same question in multiple different ways, and it's fairly good at orientating you to the right piece of guidance information. And failing both of those, down in the bottom right-hand corner, we've got humans. So there's plenty of the people in the team here at Snap. This is manned almost round the clock. And you can ask both technology-based questions if you're stuck on the IT front, commercial questions, or indeed if you're looking for some type of inspiration about go-to-market strategy. That's exactly how Phil got in contact with me at Dice, and we came up with the idea of tagging these local garages in to look at MOT and servicing, like that example I showed you on Twitter just earlier. So that's how we help you get started. You'll also be assigned an account manager, so there'll be a dedicated point of contact. So again, if you want to drop someone an email and get on a screen share and get them to actually show you through something, again, that's absolutely possible. So finally, just one last point on that. In here, it's not just a case of actually guiding you to build the profile. We've also got a whole load of help articles, and that's where we share with you things like that social sharing and looking at how we articulate to sponsors what we perceive to be our value to them as a business, based on those calculations like I showed you for Dice and Watsonians. And that's also complemented by a library in here. But this library will eventually be consolidated all into the knowledge base. But there's plenty of information of all the successes that people have been having all around the UK that we share with you. As I scroll down this screen, this is your dashboard. So this is an internal view for you as a club. So you've got your logo and a cover image. You've got the ability to invite other clubs to the system, and there's some rewards for you for doing that. We do offer a service to build the profile for you. I would actively encourage you not to spend the money in asking us to do it for you. What we found is that it's very much, we see a lot more success with clubs that have individuals who go ahead and build their own profile, because they just buy into the system far more and they have a better understanding of how it works if they built it themselves. We come down to the go live section. This is obviously fully green. This bar is fully green because it's already been completed. But if I very briefly click into here, you'll see that building this entire profile is on the basis of these 4 tabs being complete. It's a really simple form. We just populate the information. And once we've got across these 4 tabs, we'll be in a position where we're 100% complete and we're ready to go live. You request go live, it comes to us for vetting. We'll provide any feedback that we think is relevant and needs to be changed before we publish you to the outside world. And the point at which it's ready to go, we can then publish it. Moving further down, we've got our sponsorship goal here. So in this particular case, we're looking for £500,000 by February. So a big audacious goal. It's going to be clearly very difficult for Big Town RSC, but of course this may well be, and it is for many clubs, it's £1,500 because they're looking to just offset the cost of some hire for training pitches. These numbers are, as I say, entirely fictitious. So don't be daunted by the £500,000. It could be that it's 5,000, 10,000, or £1,500. We've got social sharing here. So this is, I'll come back to this because it's a pretty major piece of functionality, but this is how we tell the world that we're open for business. Moving on down, we've got all of our deals. So you may well currently manage this in a little black book. It may well be in someone's mind, or it may well be on an Excel spreadsheet, all of which are perfectly credible and work perfectly well for many, many people. Heaven forbid anything were to happen to the individual, the black book be lost, or the computer get a virus, and the Excel spreadsheet be corrupt. And I've heard all of those stories genuinely from clubs over the last 8 years where someone's moved on from the club, passed away, fallen out, had a disagreement, the Excel spreadsheet, the club computer broke, whatever it may be. And there was a genuine fear of and a reality of not knowing what's due for renewal, when, who the point of contact was, how much did they pay last year, etc., etc. We have all of our deals living here in the deals section, and better still, the system provides you with a prompt when there's actions required against those deals. Now, in these cases, it might be because they're due for renewal. Equally, it may well be that there is an item within the contract that is a deliverable that was due in January, and therefore it's giving you a prompt to say, don't forget you've got XYZ organization due to be providing sampling at halftime to the fans on the sideline. It's a juice brand, and they're giving out little juice samples at halftime, and all of that information will prompt you for those deals. We've got our messaging here, so the ability for communication between the sponsor and you as a club to be captured and recorded. We've got our assets and our opportunities. And this is really the digitization of what historically might have been your sponsorship brochure. So if we use an example here of, it may well be that there's 2 or 3 volunteers that work in the sponsorship space for your club. You might have designed a lovely A5 glossy brochure, had 100 copies of it printed, and between the 4 of you, you take it to market and try and secure some sponsors. Now, as admirable as that is, and I've been there and I've done it, and that's exactly how we used to do it for my rugby club 8+ years ago. But when somebody's successful in selling the item on page 2, the reality is that you've then got 99 other copies that have got page 2, which is redundant. And unless the 4 of you are communicating really well together, it may well be that the other 3 of you are still trying to sell the item on page 2. And the beauty of this, it just digitizes it and propels it forward into the 21st century, and we can build all of our inventory amongst our assets and opportunities here. An asset is essentially the holding container which holds your opportunities. So if we were to use football as an example, we might have the first 11 football shirt. That would be the asset, and the opportunities would be its chest, the back, the left sleeve, the right sleeve, and so on. And it's the opportunities that we can actually have sponsored. We've then got our tasks. So if we were sponsoring a shirt, for example, here's one, a deal that we did earlier. So somebody's got to provide the visual proofs to the sponsor to sign off, and then ultimately they've then got to be printed. So we can create some really granular tasks as a project management tool to make sure that all of the things that need to happen to make sure the sponsorship and the partnership is a success gets done, and gets done by the right person in a timely fashion. Moving back up, so if at this point we've digitized our inventory, we've got a Snap profile. If I was to draw the analogy to high street retail, we've essentially just leased or purchased our shop. That's getting a Snap profile. We've then put all of the stock on the shelves, which is like building out our assets and opportunities, all of our inventory. That's like lining the walls with all the fantastic clothes. And we've got the staff in the shop, the tills are switched on, and now we need to tell the world that we're actually open for business. And the way we do that at Snap is with this social sharing tool. Now, a number of you will probably be familiar with systems like Hootsuite or Buffer or TweetDeck, and you'll see some obvious similarities here with what we've done. However, we built this as we built the whole system in collaboration with volunteers just like yourselves. And one of the pieces of feedback we had about communicating outbound was, that just because you're volunteering around sponsorship, it doesn't mean you're a wordsmith. It doesn't mean you are capable or willing to write copy. You might not know how to use social media in the sense of creating hashtags or linking URLs back to pieces of content. So we've tried to do all of that work for you. So it goes a considerable step further than the likes of these aggregation channels like Hootsuite and the like. Not to mention the fact that great systems, and they are great systems like Hootsuite, purely aggregate the social media channels. They don't produce content for you, and you'll pay £99 a month for a multi-user license there. This is a piece of functionality that we include within our package use. So here I can connect Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I'm going to select just Twitter for the sake of showing you this evening. I can use a suggested text that Snap's already written. It might not be the right tone of voice. You can absolutely edit it as you see fit. You can go in and post at that stage, and you can simply get it straight out to your Twitter feed. Alternatively, I could use that suggested text, but it might be that I want some promotional media, and it might be that I'm a cricket club. I can simply filter by cricket, use one of our images, and post again. So that's just literally telling the world that, hi, we're on Snap, check out our profile, click here, and it will take them straight to your page. I can also promote my opportunities. So once I've built that inventory, and like I mentioned earlier, it might be that it's the first team shirt, and it might be the team shirt. I'm going to use this left sleeve example here. Now, if I select that left sleeve, it comes up, it shows me the image that's associated with that opportunity. So I haven't had to go and find an opportunity image. I haven't had to write the text, because you'll notice here this is all changed because we're now selecting opportunities. I still have the ability to edit it as I see fit, and I can post it. And that goes off to my Twitter feed as well. Finally, we've introduced the ability here to thank and acknowledge or communicate with sponsors. So if I choose Zetra, again, it's pulled through the relevant image, in this case, Zetra's logo. It's changed the text, which includes a link to their channel. So when I post this, it's actually going to go ding in their hand, on their palm, because they're going to get a notification saying that Big Town RFC has mentioned Zetra in a post. But we went one stage further again here because we've introduced scheduling. And why clubs suggested they wanted this is very often volunteers are wearing one of many hats on a match day. And if we wanted to acknowledge, thank every sponsor in the lead up to kickoff on a Saturday, that would be a very labour intensive task for a volunteer that might also be hosting sponsors on the day, standing on the gate, collecting gate money, car parking, and all those other jobs that volunteers typically end up getting roped into doing. Heaven forbid actually just standing on the sideline, enjoying a drink and a bacon roll and actually enjoying watching the game. So here we have the ability to schedule this post every Saturday, going off at half an hour intervals all the way through to 2022, and we click post and that's done. And if you imagine, we could sit here at the start of the season for 10 minutes and post on a recurring basis for every single one of our sponsors at half an hour intervals in the lead up to kickoff on a Saturday or Sunday or wherever it may be, and forget about it for the rest of the season because we know it's going to happen. You can always go down and see your calendar, so you know exactly when which sponsor is going to get mentioned. And better still, you can go in and change it. So it may well be that the sponsor wants a particular message mentioned on a particular period in time. You can go in, edit the content, the days, the times, or indeed remove it altogether. If I just pop over to our feed now and just refresh that, we see that content that I've been posting as I've been showing you 2 minutes ago here, pulling through. So all of that stuff was happening in real time. Excuse me. So that's how we've, again, streamlined that communication, both from an opportunity promotion, the fact that you're using Snap, and the ability to communicate with your existing sponsors. So we've digitized our inventory. We've built a shop window. We've told the world we're open for business. Now, if I just change the screen that I'm sharing, I'm going to now flip over to the other side of the equation, which is sponsors. So,
Mark, before you do that, I think it'd be quite valuable if you showed them what their public-facing page looks like. I don't think we've covered that yet. So if you go to Big Town's page and just show them what the actual shop window, as it were, looks like to the sponsor.
I think that's a fantastic idea. So that's right here. So on this Zetra side of the screen, I've got 3 tabs open. So I talked earlier on Twitter about Dice and Watsonians. So I've got their external profiles here. So Dice Rugby Club, this is what their external profile looks like. So when the outside world sees one of those social posts maybe and clicks on the link to come through, this is what a potential sponsor would see. So we've got a cover image which captures a bit of action, a bit of pitch side stuff. And this is one of the deals that they did through us with SumUp. And we can see that top right of their cover image. They've got their logo. They're geolocated on a map. We've got 3 reasons why they should be sponsored. Some of their sponsors included on a carousel here. Their social feeds pulled through. They've got an About Us section, which we have quite a strong view on the structure of this. Very often clubs will come in here and copy and paste the About Us section from the website, which is predominantly historical. And clearly here what we're looking at is a sales pitch. You know, we are looking to advertise ourselves to sponsors. So who are we as Dice Rugby Club? Why sponsor us? We then talk about where we are today as a club. So what are we buying into right now as sponsors? What's the aspirations? So what journey are we going to take you on as a sponsor? And then finally our history. So why are we credible? What we've said above is going to happen. And then finally, we've got lots of important stuff from a searching and filtering perspective. So we start talking about social media impressions, the size of the club, its social demographics, number of teams, genders, ages. And these are all things that can be filtered and searched on by the sponsors. So a bit like searching on Auto Trader for a car, it may well be that we want a red car, which is a 4x4 with an automatic transmission, and we would search based on that criteria.
And one of the things that we mentioned on this call is obviously taking best practice away. Regardless of whether you decide to move forward with using Snap and going digital, or you remain on your physical black book, one thing we do strongly advocate is that you take stock of these things. So how we communicate ourselves as a sales opportunity, as a commercial opportunity, rather than just saying the history of the club. What we just showed you there, those aspirations and what journey we're going to take the sponsor on. But then also just a bit of breakdown on what our social demographics are at the club, and then the reach with our newsletters and stuff, that will really help you basically communicate that you are a commercial property to any potential new sponsor. And furthermore, you can show them how you fit their objectives. So if they want to target women only, you can show that you've got women's teams and X amount of women's members. If they want to target youth only, you can say how many youth teams you've got and how many members that you have within those criteria. So it's doing stuff like this, just a bit of legwork to break down the demographics of the club and our reach and etc. So we can appeal to sponsors from now on into the future.
Thanks, Will. So very similar looking profile for Watsonians Cricket Club. And if I just pop back to Dice, come down here, because I know they've got some opportunities still available. So down within their people and their player sponsorships, you can see here they're under this category of asset people. They've got player sponsorship. And if I go to the fullback, I can go into this opportunity card. I can see here as Zetra, I can go in and play around and look what my logo might look like on their shirt. I can see some information about what sponsoring number 15 entails, what the process is, what the benefits are, and I have the ability to express my interest in this opportunity at that point. So that's what an external profile looks like. If I come into this search environment here of Zetra, this fictitious potential sponsor, and I look for Big Town RFC, I search for Big Town RFC, and it shows me the opportunities that they have available. Now, there is obviously a huge array of very random items in here, corner flags in football, cricket stumps, and rugby shirts. So, of course, these are all fictitious and dummy opportunities. And I'm going to go a couple of pages further down because I just wanted to highlight again the point around the ability to list here things like electricity bills or covering fixed costs for bar managers or cleaners, etc. Because there really is no limit to what you can list. And again, this is something that you certainly wouldn't be including if you were paying per page to print digitally printed brochures, because it simply wouldn't be economical to do so. But here we have a completely infinite number of items that we can include in our inventory, so it doesn't preclude us from doing that. So if I was to take this November gas bill and view that one, I can come in here and I can express interest. And in doing so, it brings up this little form, and I can write what I like here. And I'm sure I'd write something, much more considered than, "Hi, I'm interested." But again, for the sake of showing you, I'm going to do just that. And that fires a message off to the club. And if I switch over again and just share the other screen, you'll see that I have a new notification. And that notification is up here on the top bar. Now, of course, we know that people aren't sitting staring at the screen waiting for opportunities to be to have an interest expressed in them on the Snap platform. So as you'd expect, these are accompanied by emails. So an email would have hit your mailbox, telling you that Zetra has just expressed an interest in sponsoring your November gas bill. You come in and you see it was here. So 31 seconds ago that happened. I click through and it brings me to this screen, which is our deal negotiation screen. Now, if I respond, that's essentially like accepting a LinkedIn request. So them saying, "Hi, I'm interested." They've approached me. I respond saying, "Great." It's like accepting that LinkedIn request. So my deal is now essentially in negotiation. I have here on the right-hand side the contract type. So I can choose a handshake agreement. If someone's sponsoring the match ball at the weekend for £20, no one wants to see a contract. So we can do it on a good old-fashioned handshake. We've got a Snap contract. Or if you've got a big brand, if Nike or Adidas are approaching you, then the chances are they're going to be looking to dictate their terms. I'm going to leave it on the Snap contract for now. I can agree, preview, or dismiss the deal, which is probably a bit premature at this stage. I can change the payment schedule. So I'm going to change this one to, in fact, I'm going to leave it as up front. I can go down here and I can look at the other opportunities. So I can add other opportunities into this deal. So it might well be that I also want to pay for the cleaner for £3,200. I add that in, and it changes the total deal value. And I can see that I've got these two items included. We've then got our activations. And I talked about
a cover on that, Mark, on the adding opportunity side is actually through that chat function. What we'd be looking to do, as you would do elsewhere, is to work out what the sponsor's objectives would be for sponsoring you, or try and just divulge basically what their aspirations are as a company, and whether you have anything else that may help them with that. Obviously in this example, sponsoring the November gas bill was obviously more of a philanthropic kind of donation. But it may be that they want to get some sort of exposure for it. So we could, if we had that opportunity that was available and it wasn't sold, add in a pitch side board, or we could add in, you know, the flags around the side of the pitch, or maybe it's just a full page spread in our newsletter. Those kind of things, by having a conversation with them, whether it's through the platform or not, to try and divulge where they want to take this partnership and what they're trying to get out of it, will really help you when you can basically put together a package. And then not only that is that a benefit to the company, it's a benefit to you, because you would be generating additional revenue than you would have done if you'd just gone, okay, great, you can sponsor that November gas bill. By having a bit of a conversation, we've actually upped the amount that we're selling to them, and therefore getting more revenue, not potentially just for 1 year, but for recurring years if the sponsor decides to renew.
So we can pick up on that in this activation section, because we can, I mentioned earlier, we can use this very tactically. So it could literally be as simple as you know, sending them the gas bill so they can see the value and how much it is that they need to pay. Or using Will's example, it may well be they've got 2 items there which are you know, not your typical front of shirt, left sleeve or right sleeve, etc. They are non-tangible items, and therefore it might be that it's social media posting. And we might put a pound value against that. And then within that, we can look at the tasks that make up that social media posting. So the task might be provide the content. We give that to the sponsor because it's their responsibility to provide the content. It's pending and we need it by the 16th. We'd add that in. It may well be that we need to load content onto social. That would be the responsibility of someone at the club. We certainly couldn't do it until after it's been provided. So maybe that's in anticipation for something being posted at the end of the month. Again, this can be, you know, you could have 100 tasks against 1 activation. You could have 3 activations with 1 task each. It really just depends on, as Will mentioned, what the objectives are of that brand and how you're going to actually bring that partnership to life. If I shoot back to the deal, I can now see that I've got a deal with a value. It may well be that we negotiate on the price and we reduce that and we can update it. You'll notice that every time we change something fundamentally in the deal, that it updates it with a timestamp in the transcript of the conversation, which is important. We've got the items that are included, the payment method, the payment schedule, the activations. And if I preview the deal at this point, it launches a new tab and shows me this contract, and I can see who the 2 contracting parties are. We've got some mutual vanilla T's and C's. And as we come down to the schedules, we've got who the 2 parties are, the opportunities that are included in the deal. We've got the payment schedule because we've done it all up front. It's 1 number. If we'd amortized it over 12 months, we'd have 12 line items there for the monthly installments. We've got the activations, and then we've got a transcript of the conversation. So there's no ambiguity about who said what, when, about what we were going to do. Now, if I'm happy at this point, I can agree the deal. And by clicking agree deal, it locks it down. I can now only cancel or preview. And if I would just very briefly jump back across to the sponsor side of the equation again, you'll see that they have the notification that one of my deals has been agreed by the other party, and they can simply preview, confirm agreement or reject agreement. Now, at that point, if I accepted and confirmed this agreement, it would send off the contracts via emails to both parties, and it would prompt you as the club to raise your invoice to collect payment from that sponsor. So just recapping again where we've got to so far. So at this point, we have digitized our inventory. We've got our shop window. We've got a Snap profile. We have told the world that we're open for business. Someone has seen that. They've engaged with us. We've had that negotiation. That negotiation has resulted in a deal being done. And then finally, we need to report on that because, again, I draw comparison to lots of feedback we've had. You know, it's 7:30 on a Thursday evening. We've got the committee meeting at 8:30. I'm rushing home from work. I'm jumping off the train. It's pouring with rain. I haven't updated the Excel spreadsheet. Well, no need. We can go straight into this menu here. We can come down and we can look at our sponsorship report. In one place, digitized in real time, we have all of our deals when they're due for renewal. We've got a little summary table at the top, which we can export to PDF or CSV, send it around to the committee. And as we go down here, we've got every line item, every deal in detail. And if I expand all of these, you'll see that every single deal has the opportunities, the start and end date, the value, the activations and tasks. Anything that's overdue is ragged with a simple red, amber, green color code so that we can see exactly where we are with each of our deals. So that reporting piece is taken care of. We don't just deal with the future deals, which are secured after starting to use Snap. We also have the ability to load all of our existing sponsors. So here, when I go to creating pre-existing sponsors, I can come in. It may well be that you're sponsored by HSBC, or they're already in the system. It may well be that you did a deal based on a handshake. They might have paid you monthly. It might be that they sponsor your stumps, and there may be one activation, print stumps. I create that and give it one task, provide logo. I assign that task to the right activation, to the right person, say it's pending, and create it. If I go down now to this deal, I can see that I've just created, as you've just seen, very, very quickly, a complete deal with HSBC, which is paid monthly. They sponsor the stumps, and here's the activation. This is the task. I click create, and that then sits in my deals section, which was on my dashboard. It's available in my reporting. It's fully visible, trackable. I get all my prompts around renewals and making sure I provide this logo, etc. Of course, it might not be HSBC. It might be your local butcher. And of course, they're not going to be in our system. So if you click on local butcher, it drops you down a little form, and you can put in some contact information, which enables us to then use the right tags when you try and use a social posting. And you can also invite them to Snap. And if you tick that box, it gives you this pre-written email. Of course, you can edit this as well and personalize it if they're one of your sponsors you already know. And this is really key, because the three key ways that we have seen from our data how organizations like yourself secure new sponsors using Snap is firstly via the social sharing tool, which I showed you at length earlier with the Dice and Watsonians examples of tagging local businesses in. And that's by far our most prolific way that clubs are securing sponsorship. The second is additional revenue from current sponsors, because by sending this email that's on the screen now, it gives a direct link back into your profile. So one of your existing sponsors gets this email, clicks on the link, goes in and says, oh, I didn't realize I could sponsor this. I didn't realize I could sponsor this thing. Oh, and they're really struggling to cover their utility bills this month. Oh, well, I don't mind helping out. And you get additional revenue from current sponsors. And then third and finally, the top three ways that we've seen new revenue being generated by clubs is from members and fans of your organization. And we've seen time and time again, members that have been members of the club for many years, but have never had, never been inspired to, never been asked to sponsor the club in any way. And it's not a philanthropic gesture we're looking for here. It's very much about presenting a commercial opportunity for them in their professional life. That yes, of course, it may well be that they're swayed by the emotive connection they have with the club, but you are genuinely providing a compelling commercial opportunity for them, which if they do have to go into their place of work, whether they're the CEO or someone junior, it may well be that having this digitization, this professionalism, helps them in justifying that investment decision from their business into something which they are clearly personally connected to. So that's pumping in our existing sponsors. Now, there's a whole series of other functionality here, which we simply don't have time to go into this evening. The one other I draw your attention to is the ability to invite other users. And another key statistic is we're seeing great success from organizations that have 3 or more users registered on the profile. And the simple reason for that is many hands make light work and certainly generate some accountability. So, getting more users registered from your organization, you can have different security levels. So it might be that one person remains responsible and in control of actually doing deals, but you can have other, it might be you have your social media person access, giving them access. It might be that you have various people from different sections of the club, different age groups, able to come in and do some of the legwork on loading opportunities, etc. There's no additional cost to that, which brings us neatly onto the commercials. So access to the Snap platform is £9 a month. That's £108 a year. The reason for that is the Sport Recreation Alliance did a survey back in 2018, and the average cost of being an adult participating member across the 215,000 clubs in the UK is £108 a year. So we fixed our price to that. We will always look to track the most credible piece of data we can find, which tells us what the average UK membership cost is. And that's where we base our pricing. With the promotional code that you can get from Club Development Scotland, that's reduced from £9 a month to £8.25. So essentially 12 months for the price of 11. And that's with the promo code Club Development Scotland, all in lowercase, which can be entered at the point of checkout. There is no minimum contract period, so you can sign up, pay £8.25 in 29 days' time, decide it's not for you, and cancel your subscription. You can also be assured that there is no way of paying Snap any more money than £8.25 per month. There is zero commission on sponsorship deals, so whether it's £10, £100, £100,000, you keep 100% of the revenue you secure. So we have genuinely tried to make this a no-brainer for all clubs to be able to professionalize the way in which they manage existing sponsors, gain access to best practice and the best knowledge available, and giving them the best tools to make their lives easier and more effective with regards to securing sponsorship for their organization. That's a lot to cover, and I'm conscious that I've been going pretty quick through that, and it's probably a lot to take in. Will, just before I stop sharing my screen, have I missed any is there anything glaringly obvious I've missed functionality-wise?
No, I don't think so. There was a couple of things that I wanted to say, but nothing you've missed. The first thing that I wanted to say is I actually had a question on another webinar last night, which, now that I've thought about it, is actually quite a reasonable question with the answer that I spin to them. The person asked whether Snap provides any help with their logistical side of running a club, or acquiring basically new kit sponsors or not kit sponsors, sorry, kit providers and flag providers, and so stuff that was more equipment based or logistical for running a club. And the answer that I spin to them was, obviously Snap is a sponsorship agency. We run this web-based platform, and there's an event side of the business as well. So no, we don't provide any advice on the logistical side. But the beauty of sponsorship is those activations that we showed you earlier, and how we assign those to a sponsor. So it could be, you're taking their example of flags, that you sign a new flag sponsor for the year, and you need to physically go and get new flags with the sponsor on. There's no reason why we can't, and I would actually encourage you to apply that cost to the sponsor themselves. So we're able to go and buy, if it's a rugby club, you might have 2 pitches, and that's probably about 12 flags with the new sponsor's logo on. We can say to them, as we're doing this on behalf of you, it's the new sponsor, it's going to cost us £50 to get all of these printed, made up for you. That cost is on you to cover, so that we can actively promote you around our ground. The other example that I gave them was with a kit supplier. It may be that you look to sort out a deal with them where they give you as value in kind your playing kit for the year, but in return that they become your preferred person that sells your members their training kit. So all of your members have to go and buy their tracksuit bottoms and their hoodies and their training tops and etc. But they're actually, instead of you having to go and buy your playing kit from them, they give you that in return, because you're actually adding, additional commercial revenue to them. And the only other thing I wanted to cover was, we've touched on it, but one thing that I'd encourage you to do in order to help your sort of sponsorship experience at your club, is turn your mindset, which is generally quite common, from what does the club need, to actually, we've discussed this already, but what do our members need? But then also, what do local businesses need? So if we can turn our mindset into what products and service are our members using day in, day out, whether it's at the club or on their journey to the club, or just in their day-to-day lives, and look for those products and services, companies that provide those, and then target those for sponsorship. And when we're doing that piece of work, we should then be thinking about what would that sponsor want to get from our club and through this sponsorship. So if it's a local garage that sells used cars on a Saturday or a Sunday when we're playing a game, they might want to bring a couple of high ticket cars down, park them in our car park, and basically use that as an opportunity to show them to our members. Using another example, if it's a local butcher, they may want to come to us in the summer months at our club and run taster, barbecues and etc. And if we can think in that way of what would a sponsor be able to, what would a sponsor be looking to get out of this, we can think of some quite clever activations that are not only going to add value to our club, but also add value to the sponsor themselves, therefore creating a better relationship with those sponsors, and hopefully they renew year on year, so we get recurring revenue to our club to put back into the sport.
Guys, I'm just conscious of time, and I just wanted to say that, as I said right at the very start, I genuinely hope that there will be some information that you can go away with this evening, whether you choose to apply that using the Snap tool at £8.25 a month, or whether you choose to go and apply that using your own Twitter feed with a little black book. There is no right or wrong. If you think the tool can support and help you do that quicker, more efficiently, more professionally, we'd be delighted to welcome you on the system. And if I could just take the opportunity to thank you, Andrew, for coordinating, for reaching out to your network and giving us the opportunity to speak to everyone this evening. As you can tell from our price point, we're very much a volume business. We are looking to really support all of the grassroots sport clubs across the entirety of the UK. So, it's great to be working with partners like Club Development Scotland to help facilitate getting our message out there and getting our tool out into as many hands as we possibly can. So, Andrew, I'll pass back to you. You're currently muted, but just to say thank you very much. I think you should be able to unmute yourself, I believe. You can't. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Hold on. I will pass this on. I'll pass the whole thing over to you.
There we go. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, gents. That was, as you say, Mark, there was a lot of content there. And just as I was making notes, a lot of ground covered. And as Will says, even if you choose not to go with the Snap sponsorship platform, a lot of best practice that you can learn from the content that's been shared, from working out what your assets are. And I think that was one of the questions I maybe had, which maybe clubs will think about, is which I think you've answered actually, which is how can you work out what your assets are as an organization? And actually what one of the other things I noted down was what the differences were between an asset and opportunity. But again, you've answered that, so that's great. Once you've identified them, how do you go about approaching companies, and how do you go about identifying the companies in your area? So again, that was all covered. So as I say, huge amount of content there, and I think applicable to any sort of sports organization as well. So thank you very much. I think what we'll do now is just throw it open to the floor, and answer any questions and throw them back to you guys, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
I encourage.
Seeing there is this being recorded? And yes, it is being recorded, and we will get this sent out to anyone on this call, and then anyone that missed this call tonight.
Yeah, so the call it is recorded. I know it's going to go up on the Club Development Scotland YouTube channel. This webinar software we're using this evening will also automatically send you this in a follow-up email following the conclusion of this evening's event. If there are any questions from those of you who are on the call this evening, if you want to quickly fire them down into the chat channel, Will, if you want to call them out, very happy to take any questions that you have, either on what you've seen this evening or just more generically about sponsorship, or maybe something specific about your club. If there's anything we can do to help for the remaining time that we stay on the call, I'm very happy to take any questions.
I'm happy to ask a question in the meantime, Mark, if that fills a gap whilst people are maybe scribbling their thoughts down. Sort of more generically, I guess, is which clubs have been most successful when it comes to sponsorship, and why? What's the kind of the crucial point of it, really?
Okay, I'll stick with one, because not only because it's local, but it also, and we've seen them tonight, but also I think sits firmly in the camp of answering your question. Dice have been very, very good, and I'll pick up on a number of reasons why. Generically within the system, and again I think I mentioned it, but having multiple users sharing the workload, and generally having multiple people focused on one job generates some accountability. That's certainly been a success factor that we've seen. Having a really diverse portfolio of assets and opportunities with varying different price points of entry, and I'd elaborate on that point slightly further by saying, having low cost items, low entry points, means that we don't preclude anyone from getting involved. Now, that's not to say you can't grow that revenue within that partnership. I'm a massive advocate in bringing people in on relatively low rights fees, and then having some sort of shared risk. So, having some skin in the game, as I call it, and then there being some win-win for both parties. If we can really work hard as a club to bring to life that deal and really deliver value to that sponsor, and have some sort of upside that can come back to us as a result of that success, And I'll give you an example of that. I've got a, and I'm going to give you quite an elaborate example. And again, please understand that just because I'm going to talk with relatively large numbers now, that can absolutely be applied to, let's stick with another thing we talked about tonight, the local butcher. If the local butcher sells lots more meat as a result of a referral code because you've done a great sampling session at half time on a barbecue, like Will mentioned earlier, that's equally a great deal. But I'm going to give you a live example of something we worked on down here in Guildford. We had a stockbrokers, which was a company called SI Capital. They were a group of ex-City guys who came out and started a stockbroking firm in the Surrey Hills. They sponsored the local cricket and rugby club, and they ran wine tasting evenings with members from very specific age groups, having targeted those age groups based on their buying cycles. So they went for the older teams, the vets, to talk about investments, pensions, etc. They then targeted some of the very young age groups to speak to their parents about investing for children's education. And of course, that only works with a subset of society, I understand, but it's just, again, by way of example. They came in for a sub £10,000 sponsorship of a balcony at this particular club, but they took £2.2 million under management in the first 12 months of sponsoring that particular rugby club. Needless to say, that resulted in two things. A, they then expanded that out into cricket to give them 12 months coverage through the year, but it also meant that the second year's renewal and some upside at the rugby club, where they took all of that money under management, was significantly uplifted in the renewal period. So multi-user access, accountability, low entry points, shared risk and upside. And the other thing I would say is just about proactivity. I'm not going to, for a second, going to sit here and say, pay £8.25 a month, get a technology product, sit back, wait for the money to roll through the door. It won't happen. It won't happen with any tool or any system in any walk of life. There will always be an element of work required. And hats off to people like Phil at Dice. You know, they've been proactive. They've used that social sharing tool, albeit with an efficiency, a speed, and an accuracy which they couldn't have done without the use of and the support of the tool. But they've done it. They've still had to put the work in to create that awareness and generate that momentum. So they're the three top things that I'd probably pick up on.
Perfect.
Will, have we had any questions come in?
No, nothing yet. So I guess we just make this, final opportunity to tap any of your thoughts in a chat function. And as we said, it doesn't have to be about the platform. It can be about, any sponsorship questions in general, and then also, anything that is only specific to your club.
It's either that we've done an exceptional job of covering everything, or we've bored everyone to tears and they're on the keyboard.
They're watching EastEnders in the background or something like that with it on mute, and they don't know that we're asking them for some questions.
Well, I think there was certainly a lot of content there, so good chance you've maybe answered everything and done a very good job. And thank you very much for both of your time. And what I'll do is I'll also follow up with an email to all attendees with details about how they can get in touch with you if they have any more questions and want to follow up.
Of course.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Andrew, thanks again for organising. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time this evening to come and join this evening's session. Please do keep safe, and all the best for your teams and your sports when you can get back out and get playing. So take care. All the very best.
Okay.
Thanks very much, guys.